Welcome back to the Scotti-BYTE channel, and this is Scott. So you probably came to this video with the idea that I might be able to solve the zombie apocalypse. And although that's not completely true, I can pretty much guarantee that you're not going to get your brains eaten in this video. So what exactly are zombies? Well, zombies are processes that have completed their work, but they're still prevalent on the system, and sometimes they add up pretty quickly. Here I've SSH'd into one of my servers, and you can see that there are 22 zombie processes. That means they're completed with the work that they were doing, but for one reason or another, they never actually left the system. So what are the common offenders that create zombie processes? Well, containerized applications that spawn parallel worker processes in this day of multitasking and multi-threading. A lot of times the operations that we perform are very asynchronous in nature, and programs that spawn those processes, otherwise known as the parent programs, are not always really good at determining when the children are done executing their process. So, examples of this might be Puppeteer or Playwright, which are examples of headless browsers that are used pretty frequently. Grafana Image Renderer is another one. Uptime Kuma, ChangeDetection.io, which tracks changes to websites, and I made a tutorial on that a few months ago. PDF generators are another example, and Node.js automations. So the reason is that, for the most part, they all use spawned Chromium. And so Docker and Incus tend to have parent processes that spawn children, and they don't properly terminate them in every case. So are zombies a bad thing? Well, a zombie process is a process that is completed executing, but for whatever reason, it still has an entry in the process table. That means that when you do a PS command, it still has a PID or a process ID. In Linux, the process is dead, but it still has a process ID. A zombie process is not running, and it's not consuming CPU, and it's also not using any RAM. So basically, a zombie process is a process that's dead, but the process that created it has not yet acknowledged its death. And therefore, it's still using the process ID slot. So zombies that accumulate are a problem only because they use up these finite number of process ID slots that are available in order to run programs. And zombies can be an indicator of a broken parent process. And the most common zombie processes would be Incus, LXD, or Docker containers. And zombies accumulate because containers can't always reap children. So once a container is launched, a child process, and that child process comes to conclusion, it's the job of that parent container to go ahead and properly terminate or reap that child process, and that does not always take place, and that's how we end up with zombie processes. So Docker, which is going to be probably the most common situation that's going to create these zombie processes, you can use something called Teeny, Dumbinit, or even Systemd. And you can't kill a zombie because it's already dead, as you well know. Yes, I know they eat brains, but they're already dead, and so you can't kill them again, but you do have the ability to list them out, at least in Linux. It's that they just won't chase you. So this command, this PS command, I'll put some brief show notes out there that'll list this command, will be able to list the zombie processes. And the parent process ID, otherwise known as the PPID, is the thing that we want to look at when we look at your zombie processes. And so, what exactly is the solution? You can list out the zombies as we showed here just a couple of bullets ago. And if you'll notice in this display here, column number 2, where it has the number 524136, that's the parent process ID. But then the first column here is the process ID of all of the different zombies. And so these things aren't running, but when they were running Chromium. And that's what's good about this listing, to help you point out exactly what your issue might be. So how do you fix excessive zombies in Docker? Well, Teeny, otherwise known as tiny init, is a process that is inserted into the parent container. And you can do so by editing your Docker compose file, go down to the particular service, and then after the image, whatever the image declaration is, you can put an init :true, and init :true means that it's running the tiny init process that helps with the termination of these zombie processes. And so then you want to stop and restart your Docker project with the Docker compose down and a Docker compose up -d, and it should now not be producing excessive zombies anymore. But it can still produce zombies. Otherwise, what fun would that be? So you find the suspect process, again, through that ps command that I mentioned earlier. And then you can see what it's running. And you can do that with doing a ps-fp, and you provide the process ID of the parent process. And then it will go, or actually not the parent process, but the process ID of one of the zombies that we saw from that list. And then which container is the culprit? Well, we do a cat on /proc/ and then we put the process ID of the zombie, and then /c group. And here it called out the fact that it is looking at a Docker container, and that Docker container is running under Linux containers, which really means Incus, and it's coming from a Incus container called change detection. So again, VMS Storm is my Incus host, and I'm on my Incus host, but I'm looking at a zombie, and that zombie was produced from that Docker container nested inside of the Incus container named change detection. So basically what that means is it means that we have a change detection Incus container. It's connecting to Playwright Chrome, which is that socket puppet browser. It's the headless browser. And then that headless browser is launching Chromium, and this instance of Chromium, or many instances of Chromium, are not always properly exiting, and that is what is producing our zombies. So in summary, Teeny is a great way to reduce zombie processes that can be a byproduct of these Docker applications. And you may still get zombies even if you are using Teeny. If an application forks, it double forks or spawns subprocesses without waiting for them to properly terminate, which is often the case. And this is a guardrail and not a cure-it-all. And in fact, if you're running Teeny, what you'll discover is that you may have 20 or 30 of these zombie processes around, but over time they'll go away. It's just that you won't get 300 or 400 of them out there. So your goal is to minimize the number that you have and make sure that they're being properly aged out. So again, the PS command to go ahead and list your zombie processes. And zombies are a necessary byproduct of running any processes. So you can avoid having zombies on your server as long as you don't run any programs on your server. And that means that you can absolutely guarantee that you will have no zombies if you load up a server and you never run Docker on it, and you never run Incus on it, and you never run any programs on it. And then you won't get your brains eaten, but then what's the point? So only excessive zombies that consume tons and tons of these process ID slots are actually bad, but having a certain number of zombies is considered to be completely normal. Anyway, that's it for today. Please subscribe and like to the channel, and don't forget to hit your notification bell, and we'll see you next time.